Welcome to Surgalign Virtual Investor Conference. Our goal today is to introduce you to our strategy, our team, and our vision for the integration of digital technology to improve patient outcomes. Before I begin, I'd like to share with you our forward-looking statement. With that, I'd like to introduce Terry Rich, our President and Chief Executive Officer.
Thanks, John, and welcome and thanks for your interest in Surgalign. We are really a new pure-play spine company with a mostly new leadership team, and today is designed to get you to meet the key members of that team and hear from them directly. Doug Byerly is our new EVP of Marketing and Development and comes to us after a 20-year career at DePuy and DePuy Synthes Spine, and Doug will take you through our portfolio. Brian Cornwall, Scott Doral, and I worked together for a number of years, helping to build NuVasive through its high growth years. And Brian will walk you through our professional education strategy and our commitment to research and clinical evidence. Scott's going to take you through our U.S. commercial strategy. And then Enrico San Giorgio is our EVP of International and has done a tremendous job of building our international business into a growth engine. Dr. Chris Shimanoff is a fellowship-trained spine surgeon and co-founder of Holo Surgical. He'll walk you through our revolutionary digital platform technology, and then John will take you through our summary before opening up for questions. So there's a number of reasons that I was excited about coming and taking on this challenge. The first is there was a $125 million base revenue to build off with a clean balance sheet and a broad portfolio, giving us the freedom to make strategic investments and really different from many of the other companies of our size in spine. A growing international business, which again, differentiates us, and a product portfolio that has some key differentiated to it, supported by a commitment to clinical data. We've got a large, diverse distributor network, and really one of the keys is we have tremendous access. Our national accounts team has done an excellent job of providing GPO and IDN access for us. We're a top 10 spine company, again, based on the above, and with the additional talent we are assembling, we're well positioned to take share. As everyone knows at this point, on July 20th, 2020, Surgalign was announced as a pure-play spine company. The name Surgalign clearly gets to one of the most important considerations in spine surgery, sagittal balance or spinal alignment. But also it comes from our mission to align with surgeons to improve patient outcomes by developing and delivering intelligent solutions for spine disorders. And just 9 weeks after the introduction of Surgalign, we've further demonstrated our commitment to this mission with the acquisition of Holo Surgical, a revolutionary digital surgery platform. We've been very busy in our first 90 days, and in fact, it's hard to believe it's only been 90 days. We've established Surgalign as a pure-play spine company following the divestiture of our OEM assets, continuously operated and even rebuilt the foundation of Surgalign through a global pandemic, and this has been no small feat. I recruited and hired Doug. He then moved his family across country from Rhode Island to San Diego in the midst of this pandemic. These are the type of gritty individuals we're building around. Again, despite the challenges of limited travel and face-to-face meetings, we've built a world-class leadership team and have grown our surgeon base. We filled out a spine experience marketing team and developed a new portfolio strategy. We've begun the process of integrating previous acquisitions into a singular sales channel from 3 distinct sales channels. Most importantly, acquired a technology that positions us to become the leader in digital surgery and aligned with our vision, advancing the standard of spine care by reimagining what is possible through integrated intelligent technology. We've previously outlined our strategic pillars of build, innovate, and acquire. Coming out of the sale of the OEM assets, we're quickly rebuilding and optimizing our infrastructure to support a standalone pure-play spine company. As you will hear shortly, we're expanding our organization to continue to organically develop, innovate, and clinically validate solutions to deliver better patient outcomes. While we have executed on our first acquisition of a platform technology, Holosurgical, we will continue to be opportunistic by adding differentiation, scale, and enabling technologies. Again, while only 90 days in, we have made tremendous progress against all three pillars. As you saw in both our vision and mission, our strategy is clearly focused on winning by providing better patient outcomes. Everything we do is with better outcomes in mind, and this is how we will win and take share. In order to achieve this, we'll partner with surgeons. We need their experience and know-how to develop clinically validated procedures that deliver better outcomes. We will harness transformative, innovative, and validate it clinically through clinical research. We'll build off of our legacy of differentiated core and biomaterials and focus on becoming the leaders in digital surgery. This is the executive leadership team that will lead the organization forward by delivering on our promise of partnering with surgeons to deliver better patient outcomes. I'd love for each of them to have the opportunity to address you today, but in the interest of time, we've assembled the most commercially and externally facing leaders to provide greater insight into what we are building. With that in mind, I'm pleased to turn it over to our EVP of Marketing and R&D, Doug Byerly.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate the kind words. As Terry mentioned, I joined this organization 3 months ago after a 20-year career in the spine division of J&J. I'm thrilled to join Surgalign, honored to stand alongside this talented team of leaders in helping to reinvent this organization. So today, I want to speak to you about our portfolio, our innovation agenda, and I want to close with some of our new organizational capabilities. So if we look at our current portfolio, we're very happy with the coverage that we have across most procedural categories. We cover nearly 90% of core spine surgeries and 70% of the biomaterials market, with the only gap in our biomaterials portfolio being in the BMP segment. Furthermore, we feel that we're uniquely positioned with our portfolio to capitalize on the growing trend of spine procedures to the outpatient setting. And specifically, we'll be focusing on leveraging our Coflex, Cofix, and Symmetry SI joint fusion products. When you look at the split of our revenues currently between the domestic market and the international markets, I feel that we're very well balanced with nearly 20% of our revenues coming from international sales. And compared to our peer group, we believe that puts us in a position of relative strength to accelerate our growth through our strong infrastructure and commercial presence in all major markets overseas. Now, that being said, we certainly have our opportunities as well. So I want to highlight 3 in particular that I think represent our biggest opportunities for growth in the short term. The first is in the interbody cage market, which is where I started my career. We at Surgalign have a very strong portfolio in the polymer space, but we do not yet compete in the titanium space. And specifically, we do not compete in the very fast-growing 3D printed titanium space. I'm happy to report, however, that through a lot of hard work over the past year, we've just received last month FDA clearance on 7 new 3D printed titanium cages, which are going to allow us to accelerate growth in the interbody space. And perhaps even more importantly, it's going to allow us to play in 2 spaces that we don't today, specifically the standalone ALIF category and also the standalone cervical category. On the biomaterial side of our business, while we have strong coverage, there's one segment in particular that we feel we have an opportunity to improve in, and that's the fastest growing segment of the biomaterial space, which is the cellular allograft market. We've had a long-standing track record of success with our ViBone product, which comes to us through partnership with a tissue bank called Azio. But we've been desiring a better handling product in that ViBone category. And just last week, we signed a new distribution agreement with Azio to bring their new ViBone moldable product to market, which is going to give our customers much better handling characteristics that they desire. In addition, as part of that agreement, we're also now going to be representing Azio's Kincellus chips. And through a separate supply agreement, we hope by the end of Q1 to also add a DBM fiber product to our bag. And lastly, I want to comment on our international market. As you're going to hear from our leader, Enrico, shortly, we have a huge opportunity to accelerate growth internationally. Simply by adding products that we've been successful with in the United States, we have the opportunity through continuing CE clearances to add products to the bag overseas. Specifically, we're focused on gaining CE clearance on our Streamline OCT system, as well as our entire portfolio of Fortilink cages, both on the titanium side and on the polymer side. And we just recently launched a posterior dynamic stabilization system called HPS 2.0, which is doing extremely well so far. And we're looking forward to accelerating our growth through that product line as well. As we switch gears to investments we're making in the midterm, there's a few areas that I wanted to highlight today. As many of you know, the anchor to any good spine portfolio is a best-in-class flagship posterior screw system. We are very happy with our current system, Streamline, but we have started development on an entirely new system, which is going to allow our customers to instrument the spine from the occiput all the way down to the ilium, and across all categories of spine procedures, which for us is going to really help us, especially in the deformity and the MIS segments. We also believe that having a strong presence in the lateral space is key to drive our business in not only lumbar degen, but also adult deformity. And we're making continued investments in the lateral and anterior to the psoas space. I mentioned earlier, SI joint fusion. We're currently the #2 player in the market, but there's a pretty wide gap between us and the first place competitor. I'm very bullish on this segment. It's a fast growing space. I think we've learned a lot through the marketing and sales of our Symmetry product. And we're going to apply those learnings to develop a new procedural solution, which we think is drastically going to shrink the gap between ourselves and the nearest competitor. On the biomaterial space, we feel good about our coverage, but we're really anxious to bring differentiated technology to market. And we're very fortunate that we still have a partnership with RTI, who has a longstanding history in delivering innovative tissue products. And through a partnership there, we are collaborating to bring new biomaterials differentiation to market soon. And it goes without saying that through the acquisition of Holo Surgical, which we're extremely excited about, it's going to be imperative as an R&D organization that we have seamless integration between our products and our procedures and the new Holo Surgical digital platform. So I just want to leave you with a few thoughts about our organizational capabilities. We have a very strong R&D presence in Germany, and a very talented group that's helped with a lot of the products that you've seen in front of you today. But we are as well complementing our presence overseas with a new world-class R&D Center of Excellence in San Diego, California, which is where I just recently relocated. And we've brought on a lot of talent with deep-rooted spine experience, and we're looking forward to continuing to scale up in San Diego. Additionally, we're thrilled to add some new digital capabilities through the acquisition of Holo Surgical. We've now acquired a very talented team of engineers in Warsaw, Poland, who are going to focus efforts on digital surgery, specifically artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. And I wanted to just leave with one final thought. If I've learned anything in my 20 years in spine, it's that best innovation really comes from partnering with the best clinicians. And through this leadership team who has deep-rooted relationships, we've already begun deepening those relationships, engaging with a new breed of surgeon. And we're looking forward to changing the face of this organization one surgeon at a time by further engagement with those surgeons to bring the best-in-class products to market. So on that note, I'm going to bring up the next speaker, Brian Cornwall.
Thank you, Doug, and welcome. Thank you for your interest in Surgalign. After finishing a PhD in engineering and orthopedic biomechanics, I've spent 20 years in the medical device industry, with over 13 of those years at NuVasive through the high growth, starting pre-revenue through the high growth phase, working with Scott and Terry. I had other opportunities to join companies that weren't as compelling. After an exciting run with NuVasive, I was teaching engineering and innovation and design at University of San Diego, but I was very interested in this opportunity at Surgalign with the vision of bringing a disruptive focus with compelling digital surgery platform. Surgalign is well positioned. We have a strong foundation and platform for growth. We received recently a positive audit, preparing us MDR audit, well positioning us as a company our size for growth internationally. We've also invested in clinical outcome studies, really investments that are beyond a company of our size. And it shows the dedication that we have for demonstrating clinical evidence with over 100 publications spanning the entire product portfolio from Coflex, HPS to other implant systems, even with preclinical research in the Holo digital surgery platform. We're very well positioned, and I've been tasked to leverage past experience building a team that will bolster our clinical evidence. It's going to be very interesting for you to hear more from Dr. Shimanoff and his experience building Holo Surgical. As Doug mentioned, we are building a spine center of excellence in San Diego, where we plan to leverage the very intuitive design of Holo, but to incorporate bringing surgeons in and meeting us as a company, showing our entire product portfolio range. We have experience teaching, educating, informing surgeons over 1,000 a year. We're interested in replicating that, to expanding it. We're excited to release the Holo digital surgical platform technology. It's important to note it is preclinical. We're diligently assembling our documentation for the FDA, but we have a fantastic opportunity to partner with surgeons both on the education and on the clinical research to demonstrate and validate positive clinical outcomes. With that, I'll turn it over to my commercial colleague, our Chief Commercial Officer, Scott Durrell.
Good morning. Thanks, Brian. As he mentioned, I'm Scott Durrell. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer. I joined Surgalign approximately 5 months ago. I have over 30 years of medical device experience, including commercial leadership roles with U.S. Surgical, Boston Scientific, and NuVasive. And joined NuVasive when they were a similar size to Surgalign, and we grew that business to almost $1 billion during my tenure with the company. So when we look at the current business of Surgalign, we've got a solid foundation to build on. We're a top 10 market share player. We have extensive contractual access with the leading providers across the country, hospitals, IDNs, GPOs, and we have the strategic advantage of being a pure play standalone spine company. However, as a result of numerous acquisitions over prior years, the company maintained multiple specialized sales teams that have a complementary but often conflicting distribution channel. And as Doug mentioned earlier, we do have opportunities in our product portfolio to expand and drive deeper penetration with existing customers. As we move forward, we're going to execute on the expansion, integration, and alignment of our sales forces. As I mentioned, we have multiple. We had maintained a sales force specific to our core spine technologies. We had a separate sales force for our Symmetry SI joint procedure, which resulted from the Zyga acquisition. And then lastly, we had a separate sales force for our Coflex procedure and product line, resulting from our acquisition of Paradigm. So we have a tremendous opportunity to have a consolidated product portfolio with a sales team, a market development team, and distribution partners that leverage the full line with aligned incentives. This contractual access we have in the country is really unparalleled for a company our size. It's commensurate with the top companies in spine, and it will accelerate our ability to launch new products and drive adoption of new products, as Doug highlighted previously. In addition, we're seeing a continued ASC procedural shift in the market, accelerated by the COVID pandemic, and we are well positioned to capitalize on that with our outpatient spine portfolio. And then lastly, the holosurgical technology platform, the Array platform, will allow us to significantly transform our sales and distribution channel. It will allow us to more directly engage surgeons and train on comprehensive procedural solutions. It is already enabling our ability to compete for top spine talent and top distributor partners who desire this access to this platform and really view it as a requirement for them to compete in their local markets. So we believe that over time, this platform will not only improve patient outcomes, but it's going to allow us to secure full line distributor partners and gain more committed hospital agreements as we continue to expand our contractual access in the market. So with that, I'd like to introduce Enrico Sangiorgio, our EVP of International, who will be participating with us remotely from London.
Thank you, Scott. I hope you guys can hear me very well. As John, I was part of the RTI leadership team where I was for roughly 3 years. Prior to RTI, managing international business. Prior to RTI, I spent about 20 years in the industry, equally split, I would say, between pharmaceutical and medical devices. The most recent companies were Bard Medical and Boston Scientific. So I'm incredibly excited to have had a chance to continue the work that we started international under RTI Surgical with a view to really focus on spine, which culminated now in the Surgalign strategy. So it's an incredible opportunity for me. Today, I wanted to give you basically an overview of the business, some of the achievements today in international, some uniqueness and competitive advantage around our business model and commercial structure, but also some near-term opportunities we're focusing on, which will generate more growth. Next slide, please. So when we look at the international business, I would say the best way to describe it is a bit like a hidden gem, right? It's an engine of growth. We have been growing profitably and consistently for the last 3 years at about 20%, which is an incredible result, given the fact that prior to Surgalign, RTI's international was mostly seen as a tissue business. And so the growth has been incredibly healthy, and so have the margins, which again, in a very competitive market, particularly international with different price points, is a difficult thing to achieve. The question is more about how did we get to that level of success? And I guess one of the main ingredients of our strategy was focus. We moved from a model where we were selling every product to every market to a very specific strategy around key geographies that would offer, a very high potential. So the size of the market was the dictating metric, but also the barrier to entry. So, which are the markets that have enough potential but have lower barrier to entry? And we came up with a list of countries that is very small in my mind, no more than 10, 12 countries. And it's interesting to see that we don't have France, for example, where the potential is big, but the barrier to entry given to the regulatory situation, the presence of local manufacturers is very difficult. You don't see Japan, where the market is probably the largest market outside the US, with an incredible difficult regulatory environment, especially when you are mostly focused on the biologics. But the truth is, just looking at the countries on the slide here, particularly Germany, UK, Italy, Spain, and Australia, and the other geographies, they represent a 1 billion opportunity. So for a company of our size, there is enough space to play and grow, more than the market rates and gain market shares. So I would say, good story so far. We can continue at these rates because we also have an infrastructure that can support, a continued growth environment. Well, what's the infrastructure? Well, to start with, we have an international headquarters based in Germany, in a very fertile medical device and particularly spine company. In fact, this area is known as the Spine Valley, with a lot of talent and expertise around instruments, but also implants. We happen to also have an experienced R&D team in-house which is, a driving force for our growth strategy, and it's readily available for our needs and customization locally. And through a combination of R&D expertise and commercial leadership, we have developed a unique, type of expertise around motion preservation. I can fairly say on the international scene, we are a leading company when it comes to motion preservation. Then, of course, to sustain growth, you need to have a scalable organization from a logistic and warehousing point of view. So we made a incredible tough decision of outsourcing our operations when it comes to distribution and warehousing to a 3PL in the Netherlands who is specialized in orthopedics and will be able to help us in our journey of growth. And not to mention the last acquisition, Holo Surgical, with the largest component and headquarter in Poland. So again, under the international umbrella, which puts us, in that kind of nice spot of a company having specific expertise in international around augmented reality and artificial intelligence. So I would say it's a story of growth with the right sizing of the organization poised for more growth. Next slide. So how are we going to grow in the future? I think our business has some uniqueness that I wanted to share with you. Well, first of all, for a company of our size, we are fully direct in terms of sales channel in Germany, Poland, and Belgium. So in these geographies, we are more than 20 people fully employed, which is an incredible competitive advantage when it comes to international markets. There are other countries where we're not fully direct, but we're building a pathway to be fully direct in the next 2-3 years. And these, countries now, we have a hybrid system. We have some of our employees on the ground, but also we have distributors or commission-based agents who are fully dedicated to our products. For the rest of the markets, we decided to be completely, based on a business-to-business model where we have stocking distributors. We are very close with our partners. Again, the number of countries is limited, so wherever we go, we tend to go deep. And it's irrelevant which business model we're using. The reality is, in every market that we are present, we have strong relationship with the end user, so our customers, our surgeons. The second aspect of uniqueness of our business is some of the products that will drive growth were actually developed and were born in international, particularly in Germany. So the first one, as Doug mentioned, is a hybrid performance system, which is basically a dynamic stabilization screw system that we launched in limited release. It will be fully released at the beginning of next year with an incredible success rate at the moment. And again, also from a clinical point of view, one of the few systems that showed a 60% reoperation reduction rate in a clinically published journal. So again, incredibly successful from an adoption point of view and a clinical strategy point of view. The other product is, again, an interesting experiment where we tried with the R&D team to combine the best of our systems. So we use the instruments of our Streamline MIS flagship products in the US, but also the screw of HPS to combine into one product called Streamline F, where we use both of the best world. And lastly, as you heard from Doug and other colleagues, we have developed for the first time a complete range of interbody with 3D printed titanium, which helped us and is going to help us to be competitive in international, where the uptake of titanium interbody has been faster than the US. Next slide, please. So what we're going to try to do in the near term to guarantee that growth rates keeps on being double digit and even more. For the first time in a few years, I have to say the investment in R&D has paid off, and we found ourselves basically launching 11 new products, between the end of the year and the first half of next year. Some of these are already mentioned: HPS 2.0, Streamline F, and the Type Plus range cage technology. We do have two important systems with a CE mark pending. One is Tetrafuse, which was launched in the US a few years ago and was incredibly successful. But we found ourselves at a cusp of change between the regulations in the EU from MDD to MDR. So that gave us some delay, but I can say Today, we are very, very close to get the CE mark. Same thing with Streamline OCT, which will complete our posterior fixation offering and will make us an incredibly competitive company in the marketplace. Now, it's not just about the products. We need to have some operational growth enablers to help us grow at a faster rate than our competitors. And I would say we are slightly ahead of our colleagues in the US in terms of Salesforce structure. We now have a unified Salesforce. We don't differentiate between the legacy paradigm or RTI. Our feet on the street are carrying one bag with all our products in it. Also, we've been very cautious, but also excited with the new trend where the Asia business, and in general, Asia for spine, is becoming larger than Europe. And so we restructured that business and we now grow very healthily. We have the infrastructure to support continuous growth. We have the regulatory environment and support team that can help, particularly with countries like China, that they have a very difficult environment. And then I would say the last point is, as Scott was mentioning, Surgalign is the result of multiple acquisitions, and particularly in international, we had a combination of legacy tissue, legacy hardware, then the paradigm presence, and so I can say we now finally can talk about a one Surgalign system. Starting from customer service, for example, or our supply chain, our sales force, and I think that will give us, as a pure spine play, again, an incredible drive to continue to grow in international markets. So with that, I would then turn over to Chris Shimanoff, who is the co-founder of Holo Surgical.
Thank you, Enrico. My name is Chris Shemionov, and I have spent my entire professional career inside of the operating room. 20 years ago, I started as an orthopedic surgery resident at the Cleveland Clinic. This was followed by completing a spine surgery fellowship at Rush University Medical Center. Over the last decade or so, I ran the spine surgery program at the University of Illinois. What is very relevant both to Holo Surgical and Surgalign is the fact that I have hands-on experience with every major manufacturer. I have used every single image-guided platform on the market. I have used every single robotics platform on the market, and I understand their shortcomings, which is precisely why I started Holo Surgical. What is important for you to understand is that we have developed an AI-based platform technology, which is applicable across all of orthopedics, soft tissue, and general surgery. Although at Surgalign, we are laser focused on delivering spine surgical solutions, the platform technology has a very broad potential. So what is the problem? Why did I start Holo Surgical? As you can see on the slide here, about 7 years ago, I was tasked with reviewing the current concepts, challenges associated with computer-assisted surgery and robotics. And there's a quote from the audience that really stuck with me that led me to develop Holo Surgical. And what was true 7 years ago remains true today. Namely, one of the surgeons in the audience said that robots are blind and dumb, so why would I want to use one? And once again, that remains true today, despite the advancements in technology. What did that surgeon mean? What does it mean that robots and computer-assisted surgical systems, such as navigation systems, are blind and dumb? As you're aware, they capture a lot of data. However, they ignore the information that's embedded in them. They lack intelligence, essentially demoting the surgeon and making the surgeon a computer input person. So the evolution of surgery has gone a long way. Approximately 50 or 60 years ago, surgeons were performing surgeries on large incisions, resulting in increased morbidity, long length of stay. Fortunately, through advancements in image guidance and instrumentation, we have graduated to this less invasive surgical world. And then more recently, over the last 5 to 6 years, we have started moving towards the direction of robots in the operating room. However, remember what I said, current robots are blind and dumb. The main barriers, in my view, in our view, and then a view of holosurgical and the reason why we did what we did, the main barriers to the development of next generation MIS systems are limited visualization and the lack of intelligence, which restricts functionality, prolongs surgical time, and really results in a worse surgical outcome than otherwise possible. So what we have developed as holosurgical is Surgery 4.0, essentially intelligent surgery. And this is not the future. This is not something that's 5 or 10 years down the road. This is available now. In 2019, we have completed our first live cases in the operating room using our holosurgical system. Surgery 4.0 combines all of the technologies which are readily available now, today, such as augmented reality, artificial intelligence, smart instruments, and real 3D visualization in real time. So what is the system? The system combines several features. One of those is 3D visualization, along with data analytics and machine learning. And the whole goal here is to improve patient outcomes while reducing surgical times and decreasing complications. What you also see on this slide is a picture from those surgeries that completed in 2019. This slide is probably the most important slide of my part of the presentation. So what is holosurgical? What is it that we have done? Well, we taught the computer anatomy. What does that mean? Well, the computer, because of the work we have done, is able to recognize the differences between bone, nerve, and blood vessel. Furthermore, it's able to segment the different anatomical structures and label them. You can think of it as exactly what has happened to me when I started my surgical residency 20 years ago, where older colleagues taught me anatomy, taught me surgical anatomy, taught me how to prevent a bad outcome. They taught me how to place an implant inside the spine. And the only reason for me to know that was to learn surgical anatomy. And that's exactly what we have done as holosurgical. We taught the computer anatomy. What's also very important for you to understand is that no other company offers this solution. Once you teach the computer anatomy, everything is possible. What you see here is a sketch of a vertebral body. This vertebral body, as you can see, comes in many shades and colors. Each one of these shades and colors represents a different subcomponent of the vertebral body. Anatomy is complex. We made it simple. And the way we did that is we taught the computer how to recognize the different subparts of the anatomy, whether it's the vertebral body, the pedicle, the transverse process, the nerve, the aorta. We taught the computer how to differentiate between those structures. Once you do that, once you teach the computer anatomy, you can deliver on the promise of augmented reality. You can do autonomous planning. How does the computer know where to place the implant? How does the computer know how big the implant is or what it's made up of? Well, in a similar fashion as a surgeon, the computer has to know the anatomy, which is exactly what we did. How does the computer guide the surgeon to the right spot? Well, the computer has to know what the right spot is. It has to know the anatomy. A smart instrument. When is the drill supposed to start? When is it supposed to stop? Did it cut too much or did it cut too little? Once again, once the computer knows anatomy, the computer will tell and assist the surgeon in delivering that. Diagnostics. Making dumb and blind robots smart. They need to know the anatomy. Predictive analytics. How do we tell what is causing the problem? How do we tell where the nerve is being compressed? Once the computer knows anatomy, it can help the surgeon in surgical decision-making. Personalized 3D printing. It's not possible without teaching the computer anatomy because otherwise, how would you know where to place the implant? What's the difference between L4 and L5? What is the difference in bone anatomy on the lateral side of the vertebral body? You have to teach the computer anatomy to be able to deliver on all of those, which is exactly what we have done. Here's a short video showing you exactly what I've been talking about. Namely, this is an anatomy of a real patient's lumbar spine, and our system segments it, meaning it breaks it down into different components, and you can see those being color-coded here, the vertebral bodies, the pedicles, the joints, the bones, and the nerves, and we control every single pixel on this screen. So we have full control of the anatomy, and the computer knows the difference between the various levels. It knows the difference between the anatomy. It will not allow a surgeon to place an implant inside the nerve or a blood vessel. So I've been focusing a lot during my presentation on operating room solutions, but you have to understand that this is a platform technology, and we can really expand it as we are actively into a preoperative outpatient setting where we are helping the doctors with diagnostics and analytics by helping them review CT scans, MRIs, and X-rays to make better decisions for their patients. Of course, the intraoperative solutions, which as a surgeon make me the most excited, as well as post-operative outpatient solutions where we track the patient's progress after an intervention in a digital fashion. So there are really 5 keys to a digital surgery platform. The most important one is the autonomous image processing. Once again, the computer has learned anatomy. It can break it down into subcomponents. It knows the relationship between the different parts. That enables the other keys to digital surgery, such as smart instruments, augmented reality, patient-specific procedures, and predictive analytics. It is not possible to deliver on points number 2, 3, 4, and 5 without solving for point number 1, the autonomous image processing. And once again, the only company that is delivering on that promise is Surgalign. So there's a video showing what that actually means. So you can see the video playing a spine, and we can turn on and off different parts of the anatomy because we broke it down. So we control every single piece of the anatomy. Furthermore, we control every level of the spine. So the computer knows the difference between L4, L5, T12, whatever it may be. Keep in mind that all this information is delivered to the surgeon in real time. So it's not like they have to take an image and ship it to the company and 3 days later it gets back to us. This is available in the operating room at the fingertips of the surgeon. Nobody else delivers on this. Right now, the surgeon essentially has to input all the data into the computer, and it should be the other way around. Here's an example of a smart instrument. Remember, as I told you, the only way to deliver on the promise of smart instruments is to be able to break down the anatomy and teach the computer anatomy and break it down into different subcomponents. What you see here is a vertebral body. You can see it's color-coded because the computer differentiates between the various anatomical structures. So how do I make the burr or the drill not drill too much and make the spine unstable? How do I prevent the drill from drilling into a blood vessel or a nerve? Well, what we do is we simulate resection planes, and the computer does that automatically. The computer knows where the joint is. The computer has been told to not cut within a certain amount of the joint to make the spine unstable, and that's exactly what happens. A stop is automatically planned, and the burr will not drill anymore, unless, of course, the surgeon overrides it. Very similar to autopilot for pilots. What you see here is the surgeon's view looking down at our system. And this combines 2 technologies, the smart guidance, which is AI-based software, as well as this quote-unquote X-ray vision augmented reality software. So our technology, once again, breaking down the anatomy into subcomponents, allows us to revolutionize personalized 3D printing because the computer knows the bone density, it knows the Young's modulus, it knows the difference between spinal levels. It can give you the exact contour of the disc. If you wanted to do this today without our technology, you would essentially be forced to click away with a mouse for days on end trying to deliver a patient implant. It's not a scalable solution. From a complexity perspective, this is a robust software application. On the right, you see 2 very complex cases of idiopathic scoliosis and congenital scoliosis. The computer has never seen these before. After we input these data sets, the computer can perfectly segment the anatomy, even if there are extra bones present. As you can see on the right side, there's an extra bone in this congenital scoliosis, and then deliver a surgical plan that the surgeon can execute in the operating room. So artificial intelligence has a potential for a wide range of applications, such as case-specific implant delivery, reducing wrong level surgery, improving surgical execution. What's important to understand is that from a surgical workflow perspective, we do not introduce any new variables into the operating room. If a surgeon is familiar with image-guided surgery, which has been around for a long time, has multiple limitations that we have solved for, there's no difference in the workflow to that surgeon. Furthermore, we reduce several of the steps. The surgeon does not need to spend extra time outside of the operating room planning for the surgery because the computer, which, as I told you, has learned anatomy, develops that plan for the surgeon. The surgeon simply has to okay the plan after verifying it. So remember, holosurgical, we taught the computer anatomy. Once you teach the computer anatomy, everything is possible. And now, Surgalign plus holosurgical make it more than possible. I'll turn it over to John.
Thanks, Chris. A really tough act to follow. I'm John Singer. I'm CFO and Chief Operating Officer of Surgalign. And as many of you know, previously I was CFO of RTI. And I was part of the team that planned the strategic transformation of RTI, and with the objective of establishing a standalone spine company. And part of the hypothesis around the establishment of a standalone spine company was that, a spine company buried in a tissue company, competing for resources with manufacturing and R&D just wasn't going to thrive. It wasn't going to reach its full potential. And by bringing the spine company, Surgalign, out from under the tissue company, we would be able to provide the resources and attract talent and drive growth. And I'm excited to be part of the team you met today. We have exponentially increased the spine knowledge of this team, and I believe the team provides solid support to the hypothesis that underpinned the separation. When you look at what we've accomplished in 2020, we completed the separation from OEM and established Surgalign as a global pure play spine company. As we outlined yesterday, we navigated through global COVID-19 business impact. We had 40% sequential growth between the second and third quarter, and basically returned the business to the performance of prior year in the previous quarter. We built a world-class leadership team, which, a significant portion of it you got introduced to today, but it goes much, much deeper than the team that's standing up here. We are in the process of designing a new product roadmap, as Doug outlined. We initiated the Salesforce integration from 3 distinct sales forces into a single sales force, which we believe over the long term will optimize the sales resources for profitable growth. And we acquired a leading position in the future of digital surgery, as Chris just walked through with his overview of Holo. We're just getting started. And as you look at the future and ask, how do we measure the progress against what you heard today? There's a couple key things we should look for in 2021. The first is, Scott's going to complete the Salesforce integration and continue to optimize that team. We're going to accelerate our innovation agenda through the introduction of new products, both domestically and internationally. We're going to achieve FDA clearance of Holo technology. As Brian outlined earlier, we're in the process of pulling together the 510(k) application. We anticipate that will be filed late this year or early next year, and we should be prepared for clearance, around mid-year. Once we get clearance, we're going to launch multiple IRB sites to build clinical evidence and continue to develop intelligent surgery. And when you look at what this team has done in a very short period of time, particularly around physician engagement and the ability to engage the physician community in supporting both the Holo technology and the innovation agenda, it's pretty astounding. We've had more visits with physicians introducing them to the Surgalign portfolio and the Holo technology in the last 60 days based upon the relationships that this team has across both the domestic and international surgeon community than I think we had in the previous 5 or 6 years at RTI alone. And that's just beginning. And as Brian outlined, implementing a strategy where we're bringing in over 1,000 surgeons a year in order to educate them on our portfolio and contribute to the evolution of the business. I think all of these factors together are going to lay the foundation through 2021 for double-digit growth in 2022 and beyond. And why are we confident that we're going to be able to drive double-digit growth? Because as we outlined today, we've got multiple drivers of growth. We've got the portfolio refresh and new product introductions. There's a pretty well-established roadmap for mid-tier spine companies to drive growth. It's new product introductions, upgrades of existing portfolio, expansion of competency, as Doug outlined in his section. We're going to reinforce the commitment to clinical evidence based upon Brian's experience. We're going to strengthen the distributor integration and leverage superior contractual access to the GPO and IDN community. We're going to continue to leverage the international platform. Obviously, the Holo launch, the placement of the Holo product, and the product pull-through that the intelligent surgery is going to enable are all drivers of growth. And then, we're going to continue to opportunistically look for distribution, license, and acquisition opportunities. Just broadly, what you heard today, we have a portfolio that's, approximately 75% hardware, 25% biologics. We believe when you look at the investments that we're making in innovation, that the growth will be driven across both the hardware and biologics portfolio. And we're about 83% domestic and 17% international. We anticipate that this will likely expand to have a higher proportion of international, given that we anticipate, slightly higher growth rates over the near term in the international portfolio. When you look out a couple years, as we indicated, 2021 is going to continue to be a year of transition. We'll position ourselves coming into 2022 for double-digit growth. And when you look at the longer-term targeted metrics that we're managing towards, it's long-term double-digit revenue growth. Growth margins, currently we're targeting between 70 and 75%, but we believe as we continue to invest in the portfolio and drive towards more sophisticated procedures, that we'll be able to drive that closer to 75% over the long run. We're going to continue to aggressively invest in R&D, both domestically and internationally, and in support of our digital surgery strategy. And then ultimately, we're driving towards a vitality index, which is the percentage of revenue which has been generated through new products of greater than 50% on an ongoing basis. I want to thank you for your interest, and we're going to now open to Q&A.
Thanks, John. We will now transition to the Q&A portion of our event. If you would like to ask a question live, please follow these instructions. On the bottom of your screen, there is a button labeled Raise Hand. Please click that button to indicate that you would like to ask a question. When selected on your screen, you will be prompted to allow unmute. Please select Allow Unmute. Shortly thereafter, you will be able to ask your questions. If you would like to get back in queue, please select Raise Hand again. We will wait just a moment to allow attendees to indicate that they would like to ask a question. Now, our first question comes from the line of Matt Hewitt at Craig-Hallum.
Thank you, and thank you for the update today. Just if you could maybe go into the Holo pull-through a little bit and your expectations once that platform is launched and you've kind of gotten it out into the hands of the key opinion leaders and maybe even a little bit broader. How will that translate into incremental growth in your core and your novel therapies product lines? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess the real answer to that is it's already begun to pull through. The interest that Holo has generated has attracted surgeons to us, and we're already seeing new surgeon adoption just based on interest in the technology as they come in and get to experience and understand what our full portfolio has to offer. So we believe upon FDA clearance that we will see significant growth and pull through from the platform.
And moving on, our next question comes from Brandon Folkes at Cantor Fitzgerald.
Hi, thanks for taking my questions, and thank you very much for the information today. Maybe just staying along those lines, you put out some targets for 2023. So, could you help frame the revenue contribution from Holo, in those targets? And then, maybe secondly, you talked about benefiting from the shift to ASCs. Can you just maybe provide some color in terms of what percentage of your business is currently in the ASC? And then along those lines, any color on the Surgalign products per procedure currently, and how we should think about that following on from the prior question in terms of the 2023 goal with maybe pull through from Holo? Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. I'll let John take that.
Yeah, so, as Terry indicated, the holo technology is enabling technology that's going to drive, revenue growth in two or three different ways. In the short term, it's, the continued physician engagement and introduction to our products, where when they get an appreciation for, the breadth of what we have to offer and, the what's coming from a digital surgery perspective, they're engaging with us and adopting the technology. The holo technology in the short term, as we go through FDA clearance, is going to have our instrumentation and implants integrated into the technology for purposes of, the smart navigation that Chris walked through. So as we've taught the computer anatomy, we've taught the computer anatomy using our products. And so as the technology gets adopted, we anticipate that that's going to drive pull-through of the current portfolio. And as Doug indicated, we're going to integrate, the products that we're developing into the holo technology as well, which is going to, further accelerate that. We do believe that there's a portion of the market that's going to want to either lease or acquire the holo technology. So that's going to contribute to the revenue growth. And so when you look at kind of our overall goals, Brandon, it's an integrated strategy, which is going to drive towards integrated growth. I would say today that our revenue per procedure, is somewhere between $6,500 and $9,000, and we anticipate that as we introduce the new product categories that we're working on the development, as well as the competencies and capabilities within the holo technology continue to evolve, we'll be able to apply that to more complicated procedures. And as we continue to expand the biologics portfolio, and that becomes increasingly relevant into the procedure categories that we're utilizing, that we should drive increase in that revenue per procedure. I don't have a precise number of what that's going to look like, but we wouldn't be surprised that as we begin to move towards double-digit growth, that we're seeing a doubling of revenue per procedure across the portfolio.
Yeah, and I think the other component, Brandon, is likely number of products per procedure is less relevant for us, given that we have such a significant portion of our revenues coming from single product procedures like Coflex or Symmetry. So it probably skews our numbers relative to others.
Great, thank you very much. That's very helpful. One follow-up, if I may. So I just found it very interesting in terms of talking about the broad application of holo, and obviously Surgalign now has made it, it's transitioned into a pure play spine company. So maybe just sort of thinking out the box, or how should we think about maybe longer term Surgalign maximizing the opportunity in the holo system that may not be inside of the spine focus?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Brandon, and look, our near-term goals are to demonstrate the utility of holo in spine surgery and prove better outcomes. As we do that, there are a number of paths that we can move forward into these various applications, whether they're orthopedic applications, liver, lung tissue applications. We'll evaluate those opportunities, but only once we have demonstrated increased in patient outcomes in spine surgery.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
All right, our next question comes from the line of Dave Turkley at JMP, which I will read on his behalf. At what level of sales, either quarterly or on an annual run rate, do you think the new company breaks even? And when specifically, in what quarter and of what year is that achievable?
John, please.
Yeah, look, we've looked long and hard at value drivers of mid-tier spine companies. And none of our research shows that they're getting valued on a multiple of cash. They're all getting valued on a multiple of growth. And we're acutely aware of the importance of driving profitable growth. and it's one of the core tenets as we look at the investments that we're making. But in the short term, our focus is on, the investments in innovation, in digital technology to accelerate the growth rate of the business, drive towards double-digit growth in 2023 and get that vitality index up to 50%. And I think if we achieve these objectives, we'll be well on our way to positive cash flow.
Our next question comes from Jim Sidoti at Sidoti & Company.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to talk a little bit about training surgeons. I mean, you have Symmetry, you have Coflex, now you have the new whole surgical software.
Hey, Jim, could you start again? We didn't catch the beginning.
Okay, the question is on the time it takes to train surgeons to use some of these unique products. You have several unique products: Symmetry, Coflex, now whole surgical navigation system. Where will you be bringing surgeons to do this training? Will you be doing it at their locations, and how long will it take to get surgeons up to speed?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part, and then I'll turn it over to a trained spine surgeon to take the rest. But we'll be doing these trainings wherever most convenient. We very much look forward to introducing surgeons to the innovation center that we're building here in San Diego and training here, but certainly internationally, and we'll have opportunities as well as throughout the U.S. In terms of how long it takes to train and gain adoption, Chris?
Yeah, so Jim, thanks for the question. We actually looked at this very question and tried to answer it in both a clinical setting and a lab setting. So what we have done to answer your question is we've invited surgeons of a wide variety of experiences, people like myself, with 20 years experience, people that have 30 years experience, but we also invited surgical residents and trainees and medical students, so people with essentially no experience. And then we put all these people against each other and tasked them with placing a spine screw in the pedicle of the spine. And quite frankly, the younger surgeons performed just as well as the more experienced surgeons. So most people could get a pedicle screw inside the pedicle in less than a minute or so using our system. And the reason behind that is the beauty of the guidance that we have developed that essentially takes somebody with very little to no experience, and I'd be happy to show this to you, Jim, so you can try it, and be able to cannulate the pedicle and place a screw in it. And anyone that has had exposure to the system will understand why that's the case. So on the holosurgical side, I can tell you that not only are we making the system very intuitive by itself, but then with these more complex procedures like SI fusions, we actually simplify that procedure by providing the surgeon not only with the visualization that they need, but also with the computer guiding the surgeon every step of the way. So sort of leveraging the surgeon's experience and giving them this autopilot feature. So I think overall on the balance will be that surgeons will see a decrease learning curve for new procedures while using the holosurgical system.
And have you figured out how you're going to monetize the system? Is this going to be something where you'll do a charge on a per procedure basis, or will it be on a per system basis, or combination?
Yeah, so Jim, I think if you look at what's out in the market now between other navigation and robotic systems, it's a variety of models, whether it's based on implant usage, leases, purchases, and that's based on how hospitals view these systems differently and prefer to pay them, and so we'll come to market with the same types of strategies and how we're able to monetize it.
And then Terry, this is more of a high level question, but it seems like you've been around the block a couple of times. The space as well as anyone. You've got a lot of things going in the fire, but none of them are going to happen right away. It's going to take a while to get this product approved and out in the marketplace, to get all your plans together. In the near term, what should we be looking at to measure the progress you're making to see how you're doing against your milestones.
Yeah. So Jim, first of all, thank you. It's a very nice way of saying I'm old. So, definitely
Well,
appreciate that.
I'm as old as you are, so don't take it personally.
Yeah. So look, Jim, I think as you see us, continue to execute, against our pillars of, build, innovate, and acquire, I do think that you will see, some success from us, in terms of getting approval, new products out, sooner than maybe most people think. And, as we get into 2021, we're keenly aware that we need to be able to give you guys some metrics against which to judge us. And we're excited to begin to lay those out for you.
Thank you.
Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please click raise your hand. Our next question comes from Adrian Morale with Thorpe Abbots.
Yes, hi. First of all, thanks for these. Thanks for taking the time and taking my question. There was.
Are you there, Adrian?
Hi, thank you. There was a little bit mention about Coflex during the presentation, but I just wanted to know if you could go a little bit deeper and talk about the specific marketing plan for Coflex. And if, for example, you're thinking about going into different routes, like, for example, pain management specialists, etc. Thank you.
Sure. Why don't I have Scott take that?
Sure. So I would highlight a couple of key initiatives. One, I talked about integrating and aligning the sales force. So we've had a separate sales force for Coflex, a separate sales force for our core spine technologies. So we're going to integrate that, and our sales director team will have full revenue responsibility for the full line. So we're going to have significantly increased focus and accountability to drive that product in the market. We're also going to integrate our distributors. Historically, our core therapy distributors were not distributing Coflex, and we need to get that into their bag and get them focused on growing that product. And then lastly, it was brought up earlier, the ASC procedural shift is a compelling opportunity for us. Spine procedures in ASCs are still relatively limited. Mostly they're decompressions, a little bit anterior cervical. But for Coflex specifically, about 25% of our procedures are performed in the ASC. And that's a 44% year-over-year growth rate in ASC procedural adoption. So we think that's going to continue. The trend's been accelerated in COVID, and I think that'll be a growth driver. It's slow to change the practice habits of surgeons who are primarily, hospital based, but we are seeing a trend, and the patients prefer that type of concierge outpatient treatment, and the economics specific to Coflex in an ASC are very compelling.
And Doug, do you want to talk specifically around the marketing strategy and the customer focus?
Yeah, we clearly believe that the spine surgeon is our customer. We're acutely aware of the fact that there are pain management physicians that are also doing these types of procedures, but we're going to stay laser focused on the spine surgeon. I think there's plenty of room for growth with that customer audience. You're hard pressed to find a product, I think, in spine that has more solid clinical data than Coflex. And, for us, it's just a matter of reach. I feel like we just need to reach more surgeons to tell the Coflex story. And it's going to be a source of growth for us.
Yeah, I think, a couple of the other key clinical components to understand about Coflex versus some of the other, products that are, going out to the pain management group. They're based on technologies that have failed previously and been removed from market, because you don't get what Coflex gives you, which is a direct decompression. And the pain docs are not able to provide a direct decompression. They're purely distracted on the spinous process, and as the bone remodels, they end up having, deeper product failure. I think the other component that'll drive adoption is, it was suggested earlier this year by CMS that the RVUs associated with the Coflex procedure are undervalued and need to be revisited. And so we're working, hard to get that change, which we believe will drive broader surgeon adoption.
Thank you so much. And if I could fit in another question there, could you please talk about any new innovations in your roadmap for your product portfolio? And if there's anything there, we've heard about surgeons really wanting to spend less time in the OR and moving patients less. If there's anything to address those issues, thanks.
Yeah, so I think why don't I let Doug take the first half of that, and then I think Chris with Holo, you can drive after the second.
Sure.
Yeah, I highlighted our short and midterm innovation agenda. There are other things that we're of course doing, which we didn't talk about today. As we increase the scale of our R&D organization, it's going to enable us to take on more. In the short term, if you want to talk about efficiency in the operating room, having spent 3 years running the digital surgery group for J&J Spine Division, digital surgery holds the best promise for that. I mean, if you look at how innovation has evolved over the past couple of decades in spine, it's been purely incremental in nature. I don't think there's been a lot of advances at all in terms of surgical efficiency. The promise of digital surgery to help with decision-making, planning, and accurate reproducible execution is really what it's all about. And, I'm a firm believer, and I know Dr. Shimanoff is a firm believer as well, that it's those digital technologies that are really going to make the transformational difference in the operating room in terms of efficiency.
Why don't you give the example on symmetry that we were talking about yesterday?
Yeah, so symmetry is interesting. In my previous employer, we did not have an SI joint fusion product, so I'm becoming familiar with the procedure. I spent last weekend in a lab with some surgeons, better understanding that procedure. And what's remarkable to me is that it's a procedure that in time can be done quickly in a half an hour. But initially, the targeting that's required with use of standard fluoroscopy is disorienting for surgeons. I liken it to when we first introduced percutaneous pedicle screws, and we had to teach surgeons how to use fluoroscopy as a tool to help align themselves to do these less invasive procedures. So I would say it's highly disorienting to target these SI joint procedures. And I think that's, truth be told, probably a large part of why the procedure hasn't been adopted more quickly, because it is a great procedure, much like kyphoplasties or ACDFs. Patients do well immediately after surgery. And one of the things we spent time talking to the surgeons about was what would help them more greatly adopt these SI joint procedures. And it immediately transitioned to holosurgical. If you can scan the patient and understand where you need to place an implant, then the game's over. You don't need to use fluoroscopy to target and be disoriented, because the holosurgical technology is going to show you where your screw should go. It's going to show you your trajectory. And operating, I'm going to oversimplify it, but operating becomes kind of like operating on a sawbone model that's sitting on a table in front of you, because you can see everything in 3D. And so I think that's going to have the biggest transformational change, I think, in that procedure in particular.
Yeah, thanks, Doug, and that's a great segue, and you've sort of stole a little bit of my thunder. But Adrian, to answer your question, and Doug used the SI joint procedure as an example. So as you remember from my presentation, we taught the computer anatomy. Well, we taught the computer the SI anatomy. The computer knows exactly where to place the implant, and it shows the surgeon the perfect trajectory. All the surgeon needs to do is line their hand with what the computer suggests as the perfect trajectory. Now, of course, the surgeon has full control. They can modify if they seem fit, this and that. But the reality is 99 times out of 100, the computer will show you exactly what it needs to show you without any surgeon input or intervention. So no human in the loop, and it'll do it in real time. So to save surgeons time, you can look at it in a couple ways. How does a surgeon spend their time inside and outside of the operating room? As we start to deliver, and not just a Surgalign, but in the ecosystem, as companies start to deliver more and more advanced technologies, they unfortunately, and the reason is they have not taught the computer anatomy, they require the surgeon to spend more and more time before the surgery to plan the procedure so that in the operating room, the system executes the procedure, and a robotic case is a perfect example. So in Doug's example, if you tried to use a robot, today's robot, to do the SI fusion, that surgeon would have to scan the patient before the surgery. They would have to spend 15, 20, whatever minutes per case planning for that, and then set the system up in the operating and monitor and make sure that the surgery is properly executed. So holo technology eliminates the first half of that, right? So the computer automatically in real time, and I mean, this is like 2 to 3 minutes max, plans the entire procedure, registers to the patient, and shows the surgeon the perfect trajectory. So we just freed up 20 minutes per case. If you can do the math better than me, 200 cases a year, that adds up to being real savings for the surgeon, so they can see more patients, do more cases, or simply enjoy their time with their families. And that's a very sticky thing, and nobody that has seen automatic planning will want to go to manual planning ever again. I hope that answers your question, Adrian.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right, our next question comes from Chris Hammond at Jaguar Capital, which I will read on his behalf. This is for John. Can you please clarify the revenue growth goal of double-digit growth in 2023? Is that a compound annual growth rate from 20 to 23, or a goal of hitting double-digit growth by 2023? And secondly, John, you noted double-digit growth in 2022 and thereafter. So does that mean that 2021 is a single-digit growth year?
So I'll go in order of the questions. So it is double-digit annual growth that we're targeting on a consistent basis, beginning in 22 and continuing through 23 and beyond. And the growth rate in 21 is going to be an interesting, because you're dealing with the COVID comparisons, and so I think intuitively, given the weakness that we experienced, particularly from March through June, there's a pretty good chance that we should be able to drive double-digit growth against the current year performance. And so, that's kind of what we're looking at, just given the overall dynamics. The hesitancy that I will highlight, and it's a fourth quarter hesitancy as well, is we are seeing closure of markets internationally. So a lot of the recovery that we saw in the third quarter. We're seeing pullback internationally. Chris's hospital in Chicago is beginning to limit procedures. So we do believe the hospitals learned from the first time around, and so we're not going to see a total shutdown. But we are seeing a slowing. We do not anticipate that we'll see sequential growth between the third and the fourth quarter. I think the fourth quarter will look a lot like the third quarter, and could actually, if we continue to see rapid acceleration of the reduction of procedures, could go backwards. But anticipating that we come out of this year, looking like we did in the third quarter, we should have an operating plan in which we're seeing double-digit growth against kind of weak comparisons.
And again, if you'd like to ask a question, please click the raise hand button. If there are no further questions, we have one last question from an individual investor who I will read on his behalf. Do you all have an ETA for the FDA approval for the Holo surgical platform? And then what are your plans for commercializing the platform outside of the US?
Brian, do you want to?
Sure. So our plan is to submit. The good news is that Holo Surgical had 2 very productive pre-submission meetings, getting very good interaction and guidance from the agency. So our plan is to submit, be as responsive as possible. We also have very well-defined plans for subsequent submissions and to continue to iterate on the initial indications. So I would say our first plan is to get familiar with the FDA, have them comfortable with the technology, and to continue to iterate beyond that. The reason for the defined timeline on the IRBs is that is going to be very important for our international strategy. As regulations change to MDR, we need to have clinical evidence to expand our penetration into the international markets. So we have multiple parallel paths for expanding indications, collecting clinical evidence, and then expanding our geographies.
And with that, there are no further questions. So that concludes our Q&A session. I would now like to turn the call back over to Mr. Terry Rich, President and CEO, for any closing remarks.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for making the time to come here and your interest in Surgalign. As you can see, in our first 90 days as a standalone spine company, I believe we've accomplished a lot. And what I'll tell you is I couldn't be more excited about what we've done, but I'm even more excited about the team that we continue to build and the opportunity that we have in the future. So again, thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to talking soon.